So I am actually getting ready to interview Matt Sydal, who is a professional wrestler. And, you know, this is one of those things that's always kind of interesting to me because people who know that I don't do my Twitter, and a lot of the connections and people that we meet have been through Twitter. So it isn't really me, and I don't really know anybody. And then when this got arranged, I started researching. And so I just want to share with everybody a little bit about who I'm going to be interviewing, because this is something very cool. All right. So I have this, and look, there's probably all sorts of rules about this, but anyway, I have it queued up. This is the person I'm going to be speaking with. This is him as Evan Bourne doing what's called Airborne. Watch this thing, which it's just look at this. Look at this. So, you know, I and as someone who grew up going to wrestling with my dad, I've always appreciated him. And I mean, I know it's theater to some extent, but the athleticism is just off the charts, insane, and obviously significant risk of injury. And I gotta say, there is just a part of me that really digs this stuff. Look at him. Anyway, so that is who I'm going to be talking to. That is Matt. And I don't want to get in trouble for putting that out here, but I did do a little research on him. And he is from Missouri and actually went to the University of Missouri, Mizzou, which I am very familiar with as somebody who grew up with a journalism background, as University of Missouri and Columbia is one of the premier journalism programs in the country, which I don't know that that's what he studied. I don't know. But anyway, so I just was doing a little research and I came across this. It's called, when he as character, it's Evan Bourne and it's Airborne. And anyway, I find that really interesting. So I'm going to try to unshare that. This is all, let's see if I can get back to, my screen. How do I do this now? Okay, there we go. So I am definitely learning as I'm going. But anyway, that is a little preview as to Matt, who is going to be coming on. And I also was fortunate enough to catch a couple of interviews that he did talking about current affairs, talking about some of the problems that we have here. And I know that he is a big proponent of Medicare for All, which obviously is something that is very important to us here at Generational Change. And I look forward to talking with him about, you know, all of what we're really trying to do is build bridges, build coalitions, and really start bringing people together that are on the same page, but are from different populations, different worlds. Maybe we didn't know each other. Maybe we didn't know that we were on the same page. We get very caught up in labels. We get very caught up in blue versus red, Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal, and a lot of these terms. And I maintain that if we stick to issues and we stick to policy, we have a lot more in common than we don't. And I have been proving this true for the past couple of years. And I will continue to do so. And I think the more people that we bring into a circle, a coalition of people that really do want to see change, I think that that's how this is really going to happen. So I'm just going to tweak a few things while we're waiting for Matt to come on. Hopefully audio is good. Hopefully everything is good. And then I have to make it so that we are side by side. I tend to have it so that it's in speaker view, which isn't as good, apparently. I'm actually thinking I'm getting pretty good at this. Pretty good. And the best part is honestly one of the most fun thing about campaigning for me really was meeting all of the people who I respect and listen to and really count on for my news source, because I'm not going to sit there and filter through mainstream media. I can't watch that brain poison. So I rely on people like the Rational National and Humanist Report and Kyle Kalinske and people. It's almost my news curators. And to be able to talk with and speak with people that to me are so influential and so just powerful in the current movement where we're going was just such a thrill. And now to be able to be on the other side of that and be interviewing some of these people is really, really cool, especially given that I am a journalism background. This is me getting as going as back far to my roots, like 3 degrees ago, 3 degrees ago when I was a journalism major at the University of Colorado, before I got lured into advertising, which arguably is not the most sincere form of media and journalism. Yet I would argue it's been really helpful in terms of campaigning, having an advertising and marketing background as well. All right. I can only hope that this works. So that was my first sort of share screen experience, which, am I the only person that when I'm doing something, I feel like there's never, the same thing never happens twice. I feel like I can use the same program, the same app, the same software, and yet every time there seems to be a different kind of technicality or a different problem or a different hoop that I have to jump through. And, definitely dealing with technology is one of those things where I feel like I show my age. I can hang out with all the young people. I could party with the young people. Okay, not party as much as I used to. Somebody is here. Dr. Coca-Cola McDonald's. That's an interesting name. So I'm gonna let him in and see what happens and see if I can. And I have it in gallery view, so I'm already ahead of the curve. But Dr. Coca-Cola McDonald's was not who I was expecting. But for all I know, the best will be when I meet somebody who also doesn't do their own Twitter. And then it turns out that we're complete like strangers. I mean, I am sort of like a Cyrano de Bergerac situation myself with the Twitter account. But who is Dr. Coca-Cola McDonald?
Oh, that's me.
Hi.
Sorry, that's me, Jen. Hi.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Sorry, I always do a lot of jokes on my Zoom calls, so that's why I have that.
No, that's awesome.
Nickname.
I was just talking a little bit about that. When it's dealing with technology is when my age really shows. And that's the thing. Like I try to act like I'm cool and hang with the young people and party with the young people, but then something comes up where I don't even know how to sign into something. And then I look like I'm 100. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I have to, in full transparency, and my partner hates when I do this, but I am not me on Twitter.
Okay.
So Twitter, it's all my policies. It's all my thought. Like my partner and I have been working this together, but being my age, I never really understood Twitter. And so I was not familiar with who you were or what the connection was until this came up as, we're doing this interview. So then I started digging around and doing some research into you. And actually, right before you just came on, I just showed a clip, which, I don't know what the rules are. I just showed a very brief clip of the airborne thing, the routine, that thing. And my question for you, first and foremost, is how do you not break every rib when you do that? That's what it looks like. It looks like it's painful on the ribs. And when you get up, I can almost see like you're like, right on the ribs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the classic pro wrestling maneuver where you essentially sacrifice yourself to land on a person You know, it's a wonderful form of theater that is also, yeah, very physically demanding. I always say I like to land on a bigger guy. So sometimes I'll wrestle like a 400-pound guy, and it's kind of a softer landing than when you land on a skinny guy who's all just bones and stuff. So that's, you know, that's pro wrestling for you. It's just a wild sport. Wild form of entertainment.
I actually grew up, and I am older than you, but my dad used to be into it. And when I was a kid, I even remember traveling, and I believe you live in the Tampa area.
Yes.
When I was
Clearwater.
a kid, and I remember I traveled, we went to somewhere near Tampa to watch a Dusty Rhodes, Manny Hernandez cage match tag team situation. And so like I go back to, and that was before there was WWF. There was no it was I think it was NWA. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah. NWA was big here. Championship Wrestling from Florida was Dusty Rhodes' organization.
It was really cool. And I mean, I always knew that it was, you know, when I say fake, I mean, I understand that it's theater, but the sport and the athleticism is just cannot be denied. And that's something that I've always really appreciated, and even kept going down here. And now one of my producers wants me to ask you if Hulk Hogan's biceps are really that big, but I have met Hulk Hogan and they are. So, you know, I actually know that, but
yeah, but as wrestling tradition would have it, no matter how big they are, you always embellish by a couple inches or something, because, you know, that's the fun of wrestling. Is nobody's gonna we don't have real weigh-in, so I can say I weigh, you know, 170 pounds if I show up 160, just to, you know, let everybody think I'm a little bit bigger. You know, luckily it's not like we do anything under oath in wrestling, so.
Right. So so this is sort of like the question a lot of people I think have, and you even hear it with other athletes when you'll have media people, basically the shut up and dribble. You know, there was that comment about LeBron kind of trying to get involved in politics. And I think the opposite. I think that people such as yourself are doing a huge service by bridging communities and building coalitions and bringing people into the policy fold that would otherwise not necessarily be interested. So I think the opposite. I think that it is amazing when people outside of the political arena get involved and take an interest and understand the importance of it, because you are definitely reaching people that someone like me would never be able to reach.
Yeah, and I think what's really special about wrestling is we're sort of building our own coalition. Sometimes we even call it politicking when we go and meet fans everywhere. And so for basically 20 years, I've been traveling around the country and the globe, meeting people one-on-one, shaking hands, signing autographs, and sort of getting to know people everywhere. And I sort of feel like that's given me a different perspective than other people might have, especially, you know, people who don't get a chance to meet, you know, a family of four who saved all week to spend their money to come see a wrestling show, and they're so appreciative. But you really get to know, like, the good side. People always present me with their best selves, so I really get a chance to see the best of the world, the best of the country when I go around. And so that's why I get so frustrated with some things in politics, when I feel like our politicians are misrepresenting the people, or they're representing their own interests at the, you know, basically sacrificing your common man, the people that fill up the stadiums for the benefit of just the people who make the money off those people. So, I mean, I've been going around the world and
You've
shaking hands and meeting a lot of people. Yeah.
That's campaigning.
One by one, very much in the exact same way. I mean, I'm trying to sell t-shirts. You're trying to sell t-shirts. You know how it is. It's very similar, but I mean, it really has been something that brings me closer to people, and I've gotten to know how people live. I mean, fans have become friends that you end up eating at their house. So when I travel, there's plenty of cities I go to where I don't have to stay at a hotel, because I've got essentially people who've become like family to me all over the world. And it's sort of been a unifying thing. That's sort of why I feel like, as somebody who represents everybody, and I feel like I have to be fighting for these people, because they're too busy working. They're too busy grinding every day, struggling to survive. I mean, we have an economy built on worker insecurity. And sometimes when I have a more secure position, it gives me the opportunity to go out and fight for everybody else.
I think, and again, that's amazing. And it's not common, But I think that has a lot to do with also the individual. So, there's a lot of people that might have the athleticism to do what you do, but they don't necessarily have the reasoning and the capacity to understand what you just said in terms of really being able to go around and connect with people. And that is special. That is a gift. And it's really nice that you recognize that and that you're using that, because we need more of that. And wrestling is definitely one of those middle America, regular people come out. I mean, I remember as a kid, and it never ceased to amaze me, the people that really, I think it's real. And not to mock it, but yeah, there is a certain element of people that I think believe it's real.
Well, I really don't think anybody believes it's real, but we talk about it as if it is. We love, the same way you might love your hometown sports team, people love their favorite wrestler. And I mean, it's when that person fights, they represent them. And, for me, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. So I feel like I really do represent like that Midwest work ethic, because, when I got into wrestling, there was the accepted, like WWE had a statement put out that said, nobody will wrestle for us unless you're over 6 feet tall and over 230 pounds. That was it. And so what I did by entering in wrestling is I decided that I wanted to change the stereotype. I wanted to change what people thought of as a wrestler. I wanted to grow it and change that, and kind of just people have are kind of set in their old ways. And I wanted to kind of shake things up. And I feel like that's the same thing we want to do in politics. People are set in these tracks that have just been run through so many times. It seems like there are no options on either side, because you're just stuck in this one track. And I felt like, because of the way the world is today, we have all this technology, we can reach out, we can actually get out of these ruts we're in and actually make the change that we want to. And now when people think of pro wrestlers, a lot of the time they think of guys like me. My friends, the Young Bucks, were able to essentially start their own company to rival WWE. And we were just wrestling in a small little American Legion hall in LA, in Reseda, California, every month for years and years. And then basically a genius billionaire by the name of Tony Khan came in and started a new wrestling organization that now rivals the WWE. This is what I would love for our progressive movement to do, to come in and rival the Republicans and the Democrats, and really give in wrestling, the fans demand, they want their star to be the champion. And we always felt like our voice wasn't heard. This is parallel to wrestling, or to politics, where there's so many people that want change, that want to end the corruption of the big money in politics, but we never get that change. And so now, if we all unify and rally together, we did it in wrestling, we can do it in the political world.
Yeah, I think that is the key. I think it is about building coalitions and building bridges from all different groups, and that's a key thing. But I got to ask you, what did you study at Mizzou?
So I was a business major. I was going to go for journalism, but it was the J school at Mizzou is very high level.
Was already talking about that before you came on, because I am a journalism background, and I am very familiar with the University of Missouri Columbia. And I even said is the best journalism program in the country.
Yeah. So that was sort of my original intention. But by my freshman year of college, I was driving back to St. Louis every weekend to wrestle. I mean, my focus shifted very much from trying to succeed in the business world to just being obsessed with chasing my dream of pro wrestling down. And really, I just loved doing it. I wasn't expecting to make money or a life off of it. It was just a hobby I was obsessed with. And I could make the grades in the business school and wrestle on the weekends. And I remember I had to quit multiple jobs because I would be coming back on a Sunday from the road. I'd be wrestling in Chicago or somewhere in Indiana. I'd be coming home and I would know there's no way I can work at Subway or work at my little office job near the library filing papers and pass my courses. So I'd have to quit the job, study all night, cram, take the test. But then by the next Thursday, I was wrapping up my work so I could go back on the road and wrestle. I mean, I loved Mizzou, but most of my time I spent there was
focused.
Yes. So I was intensely studying and then intensely traveling, and I didn't get to do all the fun social things that a normal college kid would do, but none of that really, it didn't really appeal to me. And yeah, the J school would have been option one, but then I got a degree in marketing, which would have been helpful if we had the social media tools like we do now. But I feel like the world of marketing has evolved so much that, I mean, really, it was just it was old. What I was receiving in college was sort of old news, and now I'm sure marketing programs have really changed. And yeah, so like marketing has been something that's allowed me to market myself and get hired by the WWE when I'm only, you know, a 5'8", 165-pound guy. So, you know, I guess the marketing program worked well for me.
So let me, what did your mom think about that? What did your mom think about you flying through the air and landing on and off of ladders and landing on, because now as a mom, I look at that and it's like, oh God, did she watch? Did she cover her eyes? Like, because that's scary.
Yeah, my parents were not pro wrestling fans whatsoever. I mean, my parents don't even really they don't care for sports. Both my parents are teachers. My dad was a sixth grade science teacher. My mom was in early childhood education. So it was a bit of a shock to them when I converted our trampoline in the backyard to a wrestling ring. And then even more shocking when I started building wrestling rings in the backyard, with no training, nothing. Me and my neighborhood friends basically figured out how to build a ring on our own, and then made one, and then started staging shows in the backyard.
See,
And
I'd be having everybody's parents sign liability waivers before even letting them come over to my house. If that was, I wouldn't even let my kids have a trampoline, by the way, because I think trampolines are so inherently dangerous. There are so many emergency room accidents. I have a friend whose husband's an ER doctor. Trampolines are one of the biggest causes of emergency room accidents.
Yes, they are broken wrists waiting to happen. So, but like honestly, somehow I wrestled, and this was my mom's number one rule: hey, do it, but just don't get hurt. So I started training at a local wrestling school when I was only 17. I was still in high school, and I had to have my parents sign off on it. And that was the basic rule: you can do it as long as you don't get hurt. And I got beat up, I got chopped, I got bruised, but I really didn't have a serious injury. I broke my wrist doing a crazy move one time, but I had my first real injury, 9 years into being a pro, when I was in WWE, and that was a really serious injury. I hurt my ankle really bad, but we understood
I'm just
the show
amazed you never
part
broke your neck. Breaking an ankle or wrist, whatever. But no, I mean, this is the neurotic Jewish mom part of me for sure, where it's like, I look at that and I'm like, oh, it's just scary to me. But so what are you doing now? I mean, are you still competing? Are you still, traveling around? I mean, I know we have COVID, but
yeah. So, COVID. I'm in the entertainment industry. I was doing live events every Friday and Saturday night all over the world. And then in March, I was supposed to go to Vegas for a wrestling show, and that show got canceled. And then I was unemployed for the next 6 months. But luckily, two of the organizations I work with have begun running shows again. And I also have a wrestling school here in Clearwater that I run 3 days a week. And so that also had to go on hiatus. So the coronavirus really kind of had forced me to go back kind of into my savings and dig. I mean, I was scraping by the end of luckily I've been able to reopen the school and I've been getting work, but had I not gotten work, I would have had to sell my house and move. I mean, because we've been getting no support. I know the Dems passed a bill 3 months ago in the House to get some support to all the working people. And that's just kind of been sat on grossly by McConnell, which has been really frustrating for me because I want people to stay home and be safe. But my friends, I have roommates that have to go to work. I have people that work in the service industry, people that work at bars and restaurants. And when they reopen, these people have to go back to work and they have to run the risk of getting the coronavirus, which we know can be debilitating. And it could be even worse if, as a young person, you get it and then you go visit your grandparents and you give it to them. I mean, that's my main concern. And I spent a lot of time wrestling in Japan, and I really learned a lot about wrestling there, but I also learned a lot about the Japanese lifestyle. And they very much have people in Japan wear masks anytime they feel a cold coming on, anytime they feel a little bit of sickness, because they sort of have a workaholic mentality. So they want to go to work, but they don't want to get anybody else sick. And they just wear a mask. So to me, wearing a mask didn't seem like a real foreign concept at all. In fact, it seemed like a great idea and a way for us to kind of continue living life. And, you know, it didn't seem like something that would be so pushed back against.
Well, it became
So I was,
politicized, right? I mean, it was
yeah,
turned into this political issue instead of one about common courtesy and respect. And that's another thing about places like Japan, is this level of courtesy and respect that we just do not have here.
yeah, and really just caring about your neighbors and protecting your neighbors and looking after them. And I think that is a core value. I mean, everywhere I go, people, they care about their friends and their family. They want to protect them, love them, and have a nice dinner together. And people don't really need much more than that. But yet we find this thing where it's like it becomes it becomes a sign of weakness. It's just, you know, the ability to control people's thoughts and lifestyles is really on display right now, and how they can get a national consensus really quickly on a topic, and it's not really based on any fact or science. And just I get frustrated, you know, like I said, I'm the son of a science teacher, so when we kind of brush science to the side or push those scientists away, when I really think these should be our national heroes, you know, I'm not just Neil deGrasse Tyson, but people who are in epidemiology fields, people who are leading the research, who are preparing us for these pandemics, that when they hit, we were actually more prepared than we thought. The scientists knew what they were doing, and then they just kind of were not asked. And then any of their recommendations have been kind of pushed to the side. So that's just been disappointing for me, because I wanted to get back to my wrestling school and get in there with the guys. But if they were, you know, I have a student that works at Costco, one that works at an auto repair shop. They have to come into contact with people all day. So they're really sacrificing themselves for the economy. And, you know, that's not something I thought we would sacrifice ourselves for. We should be sacrificing ourselves to protect each other, not to protect the bottom line of some gigantic corporations.
So let's talk a little bit about policy, because I know that you're a proponent of Medicare for all. But when we're talking about people that are being forced to go back to work versus being home and be safe, what are your thoughts on universal basic income? And do you see that would make a big impact in the people that you have contact with in your life?
Yeah, I absolutely think that Medicare for all we should all have equal access to medical care. Your medical care shouldn't depend on your level of wealth. Obviously, you can perhaps buy more, but we should all have a standard basic living. And I mean, that's just I've been all over the world. So when I tell people in other countries that, you know, I had an auto accident and I had a $1,000 ambulance and these huge hospital bills from when I broke my foot. You know, if I hadn't been a successful wrestler, I don't know how I would have survived. I would have been one of the many hundreds of thousands declaring bankruptcy. So then when you go to a universal basic income concept, I mean, that's not much more than a tax return for most of us. That's just an advanced tax return. We can't all get $73 million tax returns, but we do deserve. I mean, our natural resources of our country get extracted and sold, and we don't get a dime of it. We privatize the profits, but yet the public has to deal with all the methane gas being released from fracking. We have to deal with all the pollution. We have to deal with all the oil spills. Here, I guess it was, I don't know the exact date, but when we had that oil spill in the Gulf, I had friends in the restaurant industry out of work, and BP, they pay nothing. They just continue to make billions of dollars off of us. And so I don't see why those companies get government subsidies, which are tax breaks, yet we can't give a universal basic income to people, because $1,000 a month, or, you know, I say more, I say $2,000 a month to every citizen, that would have been enough to keep everybody at home, happy, healthy. During this time, we would have mitigated the coronavirus much further. I think when people live on that edge where money's their number one concern, we live in a much more higher tension society. And that's a cause of more medical problems, more interpersonal problems, traffic problems, road rage. I mean, there's so many things that go with it that universal basic income could ameliorate very, very quick, instantly. And the fact that our politicians don't want to act to help the individual citizens, that they're going to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars to give to gigantic corporations, who then still go ahead and lay off their workers anyway. It just seems like we're sprinkling to the wrong side of the pile when we should be sprinkling that money somewhere else. We already give what infuriates me is when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm for lower taxes," which means cutting, and that's kind of code for cutting social services.
Yes.
When they're not for cutting big corporations' tax subsidies, which take a lot more of our income. And I mean, for me, like when I hear about cutting the military budget by 10%, that's something that excites me because I believe in peace and diplomacy, and I don't believe in selling billions of dollars of arms to Saudi Arabia. So it's just, that my perspective is that we could really help each other, and our politicians have really chosen to not to, and that's a betrayal, and that's why we're all voting in November to replace them.
Right. So is that, I mean, ultimately, like I said, I did, my partner walked in since we've been doing this, and he is the Cyrano de Bergerac on my Twitter account. But is that what really drew you to our campaign in the first place? I mean, I know that that's how we connected, was on Twitter. But obviously you're progressive, you support progressive policies. So I'm assuming that's what drew you to our campaign.
Yeah, I've been following the Florida politics and just seeing how your Twitter responds to Governor DeSantis, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and just, I mean, reading the ideas that are proposed pulled me in much deeper. 4 years ago in 2016, my life was completely different. I wasn't as involved in politics. And when I was at Mizzou, I was heavily into politics. And at that time, when I would travel on the road, I wasn't into Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity and these guys, but they were on the AM radio stations dominating, and they had a great way of speaking. And so for me, I could listen to them and just sort of hear the other side. And I couldn't, like, I never became a believer. But I heard them out, and I really was listening. And so here we are, like I kind of faded away when life gets tough, when you're like, I was on, financial stress, traveling stress, life. And so you sort of pull away from politics, which is exactly the idea behind this disenfranchisement. The reason the democracy isn't actually happening in the United States is because more people don't vote than vote for who we want to be president. So when they say, "Oh, I always get sick of hearing our president," because I don't really believe that represents the entire United States. I feel it represents the politically active group of people, and it really leaves out the disenfranchised people who feel their vote doesn't matter, or who feel intimidated to vote, or who have to work so they can't vote.
And I think this is one of the key things about people that are in pop culture, such as yourself, that have a platform to reach people that would otherwise not be engaged and would otherwise not even know. And oftentimes we're talking about people that are engaged, but in the wrong way. And they're very swayed to be voting against their own self-interest. And a lot of times that happens, especially in communities where you're going to have people that don't have the same access to education. They're not necessarily as aware of what's really going on. Mainstream media is not doing us any favors. They, have their own very set narrative that's very pro-corporate. And a lot of people don't know the difference. They just, and I'm assuming that you meet a lot of those people, that they just turn on MSNBC or Fox, and that's just it. That's what they know.
Yeah, I hear a lot of repeated phrases, and I hear the same knee-jerk reactions, literally word for word, from different people in different places, but it's because they've all heard the same response that sounds good, but it lacks critical thinking. And I think that's the most important part, because even when we say a universal basic income or Medicare for all, there's so much more to it. It's not a simple thing. There are what you would call a downside to all these things, but it really requires critical thinking to decide which is the policy that we're going to set, and what's really setting the right tone for the rest of the world. If America truly wanted to be a world leader, we would not just give my opinion on Medicare for all is America essentially dominates the globe. We have military bases in 120 different countries. All these places, including the U.S., should have Medicare for all. We should be trying to give medical services to every country, to people everywhere. Like that would be a big dream. We should be trying to bring peace and harmony to all these places instead of having bombs that get dropped. And when people look at the there's like the barcode on the back, they scan it and it says made in Tampa. Like, that's disheartening to me. And I just think, with the right vision and the right leadership, we have the technology and we have the resources. We just need the leadership and the vision to bring everybody together to accomplish these things. That really, when you alleviate the pressure on the bottom half of people that are really struggling, I think that's when you start to see improvements. That's when you see dramatic drops in crime. And especially when we stop criminalizing people for behaviors that might be, I'm essentially against almost every kind of drug being illegal and people being punished for it, because I think it's very easy to punish people who are hurting. No person does drugs, no person does heroin because to party or to feel good. They do it because they hurt, and they do it because they need help and they're self-medicating. And so by punishing these people, we're kicking the people that are down. It's easy to do, and it makes some people feel really good about themselves, punishing a drug user. But what those people really are doing is it's a call for help, and they really need support and love, and not to be kicked when they're down and to be punished and to lose whatever job they may have been barely holding on to and whatever support they had. I just think it's a whole systemic change, and it's a perspective change that we need from our leaders to really say, who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. You steal $300 million, you get a slap on the wrist. You steal, a pack of cigarettes, you're going to jail and your whole life's ruined. And not that I encourage stealing anything from anyone. It's just, we don't have a society, a criminal justice system that really reflects justice. I mean, we could get into
and why though, right? Like you know that has to do with money and profit, and the fact that our criminal justice system is for profit, whether it's the policing for profit, over militarization of the police, which benefits the military industrial complex, whether it's literal getting profits per person per night for incarceration, whether it's using prison labor which is essentially slave labor. I mean, it's just, we have a system where we've created such a profit motive in doing it the way that you were just saying. Like the profit motive is to incarcerate, not to help. And that's a huge problem. I mean, I actually think we should let all the nonviolent drug offenders out of jail. And I think we should replace that with all the pharmaceutical executives that have been pushing opioids. So I'm actually for incarceration of actual drug dealers and not the nonviolent drug offenders that we are normally referring to when we talk about who is a drug dealer, because you're right, that's kicking down. And that's something that we're very trained to do, is kick down. And I am a big believer in punching up. So that is, and when we started drug laws in this country, I don't know how familiar you are with like where a lot of that came from, but it really was systemically to incarcerate Black and brown bodies and to stifle the hippies. That was a huge part of it, because, what better way to incarcerate more Black people than to criminalize behavior that we know will lead to incarceration, even though it's behavior that the rest of us really don't find criminal.
Yeah. I mean, everything you said, I'm completely with. And I agree that the wrong people are in power and the wrong people are in jail. And I believe that the people putting these people in jail are the ones who should be held accountable, and they should have to suffer the same fate that they've been putting on other people. And it's just, there's such an arrogance towards it, and such a, like, you see how ICE treats our immigrants. They treat them like it's if they catch an illegal immigrant, it's like getting a home run. Oh, we got one. Yay, look at us. We did it. And they don't see that person as a human with a family, with kids, who probably, would have held the door open for them as they're walking into the fast food joint, who is just, we're all the same. And they use these tactics to divide people into criminals and not criminals. Oh, well, he broke the law, and then he violated his parole by smoking marijuana. Let's stick him back in jail for 6 more months, away from his family, away from the job that he struggled so hard to get. And then when he gets out, we can't give him a job. I mean, like the firefighters in California who are prisoners getting paid $3 a day, that when they get out, even though they're all trained as firefighters, they can't get a job. I mean, it is slavery. I was driving to Jacksonville, Florida the other day through the heart of Florida. So I didn't go through like Orlando and Daytona and up. I kind of cut through the middle there, and I see businesses closed, dilapidated towns. And then I see on the side of the road, cleaning up trash, prisoners. And it was so gross to me to see these people being exploited, and just my heart hurt. And that's one of the reasons I'm active in politics, because there's people who can't stand up for themselves. They can't fight back because they're wedged in. And what are they going to do? Break out from prison? You can't do that. They need people like us to stand up for them and let them free. I mean, we have states in the US where cannabis is legal, and so Illinois, people in Illinois can grow, buy, sell cannabis. They look across the river to Missouri. There's people incarcerated for the same thing. I mean, it's absolute madness. And to incarcerate someone for this, to lock them in a jail cell is cold-hearted. It's not a solution. If you think the use is a problem, that the incarceration is not a solution to the use. We would look to improve people's quality of life so they don't use drugs of despair and these problems that are more related to the situation people are born into than how they handle their problems. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, on so many different fronts. But I really believe that we can do the good quickly.
I lost your video. There you are.
Yeah, sorry, I was getting
another
FaceTime call.
So I would be remiss if I didn't at least bring up Jesse Ventura. And this is not one of those things where all wrestlers are friends. Just like I've had people, oh, you're Jewish from Florida. Do you know so and so? So no, I'm not putting it out there like, oh, you're a wrestler, you must know about Jesse Ventura. But obviously, this is somebody who arguably has come closest to being in a position of being candidate for president, somebody who has been in the executive branch, who was a governor, and someone who came out of the world in which you are in, and is also pretty progressive. So what are your thoughts about Jesse and what he's been able to do politically in bridging those two worlds?
Yeah, so I remember one of the final papers I wrote in high school was based on Jesse Ventura's book, and it was really enlightening for me to hear
Which book?
Oh gosh, it was the one where he just talked about being a Navy SEAL and then getting into politics. It was this had to have been 98 or 97 when it was put out, and I really vibed with like what he was doing and what he was into. And then for him to go on and become the governor of Minnesota. And I've heard interviews of him, and he felt like he couldn't accomplish anything. He was happy that he got a rail system between Minneapolis and St. Paul, but in the end, the institutions are bigger than just one person. And I think that's why he lives in Mexico half the year, because he put in his effort to really try and make some progress. But at a certain point, you're stifled at all ends by a system that's designed to keep the kind of wealthy in power and not have change. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of Governor Ventura. When I was in WWE, he came in to do a guest spot. This must have been in 2011 or something. And I told him, hey, listen, if you plan on running for anything, I would love to join you. I would love to promote, to be a part of anything you want to do. And he kind of made it seem like that 2012 run wasn't going to happen. And he was just kind of pushing politics to the side for his other, he reaches out through his own. He's done a number of videos, stuff on different networks.
Oh, I watch his show. Look, The World According to Jesse.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he has a great philosophy. I mean, he sort of has a very independent spirit where people should be able to take care of themselves, but also, with the government in place to empower them, to help them. And just like simple things I hate to compare the US to Japan all the time, but in Japan, if you want to go anywhere, there's a train. If you want to go from Osaka to Tokyo, no problem. I lived in a little town called Kobe. I could go up the block with the train, and yet, in 2008, we bailed out all these automakers who just make cars to sell us. And I mean, I'll go off track real quick. but I get infuriated because my students, my girlfriend, all these people, they need a car to drive to work. We're already paying tons of money for car insurance. Then they get a car. You put down a couple $1,000s, but then they're charging you 22% interest. To me, that's criminal. Selling people cars that are going to be selling people a car that depreciates in value at 22% interest, knowing full well they're going to be underwater when they go to sell it. Then you say, hey, don't worry, we'll give you a $40,000 loan for your new $10,000 car, and then you'll be underwater with that one too. I mean, there's so many places where people are getting taken advantage of legally. It's disgusting when we have, we use this legal or illegal thing, and I just feel like that's not an equation to morality. And I feel like there's so many places where we need to stand up and fight for people who are just born into a system that's there to take advantage of them. That's a predatory system. We smash our youth, our kids with advertisements from the minute they're born. They don't go outside and see nature. They go outside and see billboards. I mean, we
are predatory capitalism.
Everything.
It's predatory capitalism at its finest.
Yeah, well refined predatory capitalism. I mean, I find myself falling for it all the time as well. But like I said, it's these critical thinking skills that I was able to learn in my school that the teachers focused on, not just taking what people said, but doing the research. Because when the internet first came out, people posted all sorts of crazy things, and you sort of had to sift through to see where the source was, who was the writer, who was posting it on what website. And now I feel like people read a headline, and that's the God's gospel to them instead of really digging in.
Wikipedia knows all.
Thinking. Yeah. Well, I mean, people use, Wikipedia at least people are looking at the same thing. So you can show it to somebody and say, hey, what do you think about this article? As opposed to getting on Facebook where you only see things that support not just your side, but support things that are just more engaging and that will make you click on it regardless of the substance. And I mean, I think it's just a veil being pulled over us by social media companies just so that you pay more attention to them. That way they can sell more advertisements, which is the reason why Donald Trump is a savior to the media world, because he is a media draw. He gets people put their eyes on him. They can't turn away. So he's good for every news organization.
They love him.
And especially at a time where people are moving off of TV. Well, guess who's still spending millions of dollars on TV ads? Politicians are, because they still are able to get people on TV. But this is the last lifeline. 4 years from now, the amount of money spent on television will dwindle in comparison to what is now. And so these media corporations, they need a strong power figure to draw back in fans or draw back in voters who are going to pay attention to their program, so that way they can sell pharmaceutical ads to the pharmaceutical company, banking ads to the banking company, credit card ads to the credit card companies. That's it's this gross self cycle of kind of taking advantage of people. And I think that if we had the right leadership and the right people in power, that we could turn these things from things that eat people alive to things that kind of create life and produce communities and more holistic approaches to solving things.
One of the things that obviously we're very supportive of here is labor in general. And, Florida is a right to work state, and we have really sufficiently squashed our labor force here, more so exponentially than other places in the country. But has there ever been any sort of attempt in the wrestling world to form a union?
I think there have been, rumors and subtle talks of it. And I mean, like the big talk now with WWE is that their wrestlers are treated like independent contractors, but are not. And I mean, when I was at WWE, they control your schedule. They can control your costume. I mean, they told my friend right before we were going to go wrestle it was like a Monday night in London. And they told him, get a haircut. Like he had long hair. He had to cut his hair before, and he's an independent contractor. We're not allowed to work anywhere else, but we're independent contractors. And now they're taking away the wrestlers' Twitch accounts, any third party things they had to make money or revenue. So when I was with WWE, even though I would have to go to radio stations on a Monday before I was wrestling on Monday Night Raw, at 6:30 a.m. I was doing a media circuit, local TV, local radio, going around. Hey, my name is Matt. Nice to meet you. Okay, hi Evan. You're going on. You're tonight. You're doing radio interviews as your wrestling character Evan Bourne, promoting a show. And it really, to me, it really did not seem like an independent contractor situation. So there was it's definitely a gray area.
How did they get away with that? That really is. I mean, if you are going to classify somebody as an independent contractor, then I don't understand how you can have that much control over every little thing that they do. That's something that you do with people that are on your payroll as staff.
Yeah. And I mean, when you get into the details, it's even worse, because then you think about all they would do. So if I had to wrestle in New York City on Friday, and then we had a show down in Baltimore, then Washington, D.C., and then one in Virginia, back-to-back days, they'd fly you to New York. Then I have to rent my own rental car at my expense, which are not cheap, especially when you rent it in New York. Then I wrestle in New York City. I'll drive down to Baltimore, buy my own hotel, go to the arena at the time they tell me, do exactly what they ask of me, then drive to the next town, all on my own expenses.
And you don't get reimbursed. Like you don't get reimbursed for travel expenses. You don't get to submit that and as part of like your expense report.
Absolutely not. That we got 0 expense reports. I mean, the year I did the best with most successful pay in wrestling, I also had $80,000 in road expenses. And that's not being a tax cheat. That's not adding. That's what it cost me to rent cars, stay in hotels, and eat while I'm traveling. I mean, it was. And you also have to show up to work dressed nice, looking so you go to the gym in the morning, you drive all night till 1 or 2 in the morning, check into a hotel, which is an arduous process at 2 in the morning.
Yes.
Sleep for a little bit, wake up, go to the gym, shower, change into nice dress clothes to go to the arena, change back into your gym clothes to get ready to hear what you're going to be told to do tonight in a script that changes 4 times between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. showtime. And then they can always cut your match or add 5 minutes or take away 5 minutes. I mean, it's very interesting that we're still independent contractors. At the places I wrestle now, I really am independent. So I run my own business and I'm contracted out by different organizations across the country. So I don't really just work for one. But the way pro wrestling is set up is something where we probably should be in the Screen Actors Guild or something of that sort. And we're not. And, the people who set up who build our sets, they're in a union. Our cameramen, they're in a union. So sometimes like at some tapings they'll say, hey, we need a break for the cameramen. They need a break because of their union setup. And knowing full well that as wrestlers, we sit at that building for 12 hours. We leave when the work's done. If my match doesn't happen till 1 a.m., it doesn't happen till 1 a.m. I go out, I wrestle at 1 a.m., then I drive on to the next town and try and do it again. So, there's definitely some labor issues that could be changed around. But for me, I never feel bad for myself because I can handle it. But I get blown away when people say, oh, they should get a second job or a third job when people are working 40 hours a week for $7.25 an hour or $8.50 an hour. It's repulsive to me that people aren't getting $15 an hour. And I know we've got in this upcoming election, we're going to be able to vote for $15 an hour for Florida.
Amendment 2, everybody. Yes, on Amendment 2. Got to plug it.
Great. Amendment 2, hurrah. But I'm still like saying, this is a half measure that we're only adding in $1 a year for the next 4 years. It's a great start. We have to get there some way or another.
It's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket because right now it should be, if our minimum wage had been going along with cost of living, right now in my location in Broward, we would be somewhere around $24, $27 an hour if that were keeping up with the cost of living. And so, when people are fighting about giving people a $15 minimum wage, I'm just floored. I'm like, you have no idea how much higher that really should even be.
I agree completely. And it's like the efficiency of workers has increased, yet the profits from that never went back to them because, again, we have an entire country's labor system built on economic insecurity. And the more insecure you can keep your workers, the harder you can grind, the harder you can make them work for less money to generate more profits for the really people who do profit, which is that top 1% or that top 0.01% that really does profit off of all of our labor. And I get frustrated when people tell me they don't think the person at McDonald's or wherever should be making $15 an hour, because it's insulting, because we live in a society where everybody has to play a role. That if you're a janitor, that's an honorable job. If you're a teacher, that's an honorable job. Whatever you do is an honorable job because it's in service to a greater good. And to say these people need to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet is really a selfish perspective, because everybody's work is of equal value. So we should start everybody off at a place where if you work a full-time schedule, 40 hours a week, you should be able to afford a place to live and food for your family. And that literally, it doesn't even cover cable. Okay. $15 an hour isn't enough to get you a good Wi-Fi.
No, it's not even including entertainment. That's not even, it's just a bare minimum. And I say that all the time, is that we need to come to some sort of consensus as to what is our minimum standard of living that we are all happy with, that we find acceptable. And, when people say they don't think that somebody at McDonald's should make $15 an hour, I want to turn that around and say, so are you saying that somebody working at McDonald's deserves to live on the street? Are you saying that that person doesn't deserve to have healthcare, that they don't deserve to have, food? And, when people are just they think of life as this pie. And if somebody else gets a bigger piece, then that means your piece is smaller. And I of course am of the thought that life is an endless batch of pot cookies and there's plenty for all. But and I try to explain that when you don't have workers that are getting paid with anything wherein they have any disposable income, you cannot have a thriving capitalist economy when people have no money. So when you have no consumers, you cannot have so eventually what you have is a predatory capitalism system that we're seeing sort of imploding on itself as there's no more consumers to be consuming the goods. And I think people need to understand that it's not so much, even if you don't have a problem with it morally, which, not everybody has the same morality and think that everybody's entitled to just have a standard of living. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do it, whatever you got to do. But from an economic perspective, we can't have a thriving capitalism without consumers. And right now, we're not having consumers.
That's such a good point. So many people focus on the scarcity and not the fact that there really truly is a surplus. And as somebody who goes out, like when I wrestle on the weekends, I know people worked all week, Monday to Friday, grinding to be able to afford tickets to the show, to afford a popcorn and a soda and a hot dog and maybe a t-shirt when they come. And so I really respect when people show up to my event, I want to give them beyond their money's worth within the first 20 minutes. I want them to feel like they got their money's worth. And, if we were helping people out during this pandemic, I know I would have more students at my school. So my small business would be doing better. Every business would be doing better. All these people who I make candles or whatever home business you have, we would be able to support each other much more if we all were getting a decent amount of money and not living in really just true insecurity where it's like, if I buy this, I can't buy that. Or if I support this charity, I can't support that charity. It forces people into these places where they're really in a tense situation and not experiencing the surplus that so many people are. And we live in the US, so we have it even better than so many people across the world. What's bad for us would be incredible for so many other people. So it's just really important to get this perspective that, I just feel like the better the people around me do, the better I'm doing. And the more the people around me struggle and hurt, the more I'm going to struggle and hurt. We're not independent people. Nobody lives in this world alone. We're in a society. It absolutely is. We all drive on the roads that we share. We all, there's so much in it where we're in it together. When people try and say it's about me, or that the focus on an individual over other people just really puts you in a mind state where you do think people should get less so you can get more. But that doesn't really happen in reality. If people at McDonald's don't make $15 an hour, you're not going to make more money at all. And in fact, like you're saying, that puts less money in the economy and there's less people buying things. And we end up in kind of this place where we are now.
Okay. So now I have to ask you and I'm going to, because this is exciting for me to share screen again. So my partner wants me to ask, what was your greatest wrestling moment, and also who is your wrestling hero. But before that, I am going to share screen again because I have to show this. And this to me is just crazy cool. Like, I can't believe that this is something that you just do. Like, this is just crazy. So for people that people need to see this. All right.
Okay.
So I don't know what match this is.
This looks like a live event wrestling match.
This is insane.
I can't tell.
People need to see this.
Here we go.
See, if I was your mother, I can barely watch that. Oh my God. And then look, see, this is the thing. Like, that had to hurt. That had to hurt.
Oh yeah. I don't even know how I'm on my feet right now. Like, did I bounce onto my feet? That's crazy.
What did you do?
Yeah, that looks like
I gotta turn it off.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
Just that's my finishing move. You know, in wrestling, everybody has like a trademark move. And when I was growing up, one of my heroes in wrestling was a guy named Jushin Thunder Liger. He was this like masked wrestler who had a Mexican wrestling style, but he was a Japanese guy. And
like
so
Nacho Libre, but Japanese.
Very much so. And so I sort of was an emulator of his. And then when I just out of college, I worked for about a year, but then I got an opportunity to wrestle in Japan, and I quit. I dropped everything, moved back home so I could live on the road and go to Japan and wrestle. And that's where I met Jushin Thunder Liger and began sort of a understudy type relationship with him, where I was able to learn a lot from him throughout the years wrestling in Japan. And then I used that as my finisher. And at the time when I went to WWE, this is why I believe that we can make change. Because when I went to WWE, Vince McMahon had declared that move banned. He declared it too dangerous for wrestling, too dangerous for the opponent, too dangerous for the guy jumping.
Kind of get it. I kind of get it. It looks really
I said,
scary.
Not me. I said, for me, this is what I do. This is my specialty. For me to do something else would be dangerous for me. So I was able to convince them to just change the rules, basically. And it only took me like a month. I had like a 6-month or a year plan of like how to convince them that this is the move for me. This captures fans' imagination, and you can trust me doing it. And it really just took me like a month, and I got the go ahead. And then that became my trademark. I mean, it's still one of my trademark moves, and I really never had any problems with it until just recently when I debuted for All Elite Wrestling, which is the main competition to WWE. I slipped off the top rope and almost died.
I saw it.
It was
I
horrific.
saw it, but I wasn't sure if it was real or if it was part of the thing. Like, I saw it. I wasn't going to cue that up because I didn't know.
It's traumatizing for me because I really did. I mean, that was one of those moments where my life flashed in front of my eye. And, you know, we every day in life, you take risks. I mean, driving across the state to Jacksonville is more risky to me than jumping in a ring. But yeah, you know, it's,
are you feeling your age? Are you feeling your age a little bit?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm feeling my age because I train with all these young guys who like, I have to just fight them every day. So you're in there competing with really young. I've got 22-year-old students, 26-year-old students, 18-year-old students that are just like unbreakable. They get dropped on their head. They bounce right back up.
Yes. But you are not 18.
Correct. Yeah. I've had some neck injuries, but as a wrestler, we train our bodies to do the things that normal people can't. So we train ourselves to have the neck muscles to land on your head, or we train ourselves to chop it. You know, every day at training, we're chopping each other in the chest, chopping each other in the back, hitting each other in the neck and the head until you develop a callus where you can do superhuman things. Like if you've ever seen a pink belly where somebody gets whacked in the chest and they've got a big red mark there.
Yes.
So if you, as wrestlers, we do that to each other, but we do it so frequently that we don't even turn red. You know, we do it to the point where, like, when I was wrestling in Japan, I would get chopped so many times that eventually you just stopped feeling it. You just kind of develop this callus. And unfortunately, that's how callous we are to the way people are struggling these days. And I don't want that callus to set in for everybody. But, you know, that's how we train in wrestling. We just train to be superhumans. We dedicate ourselves to this craft, to essentially doing circus tricks on the regular, where that you see a guy in the circus do a double backflip onto a guy's shoulder, and I'm just like, I'm blown away by that. How would they do it? And to them, they're just trained so well that it's kind of a casual maneuver for them. And if they did something risky, it would be 3 flips. So, you know, maybe I could do 2. I could probably do that move and do 2 flips and crash on somebody, but that wouldn't be safe. That would be a little overboard. So yeah, I mean, wrestling it's an inherently dangerous sport. And that's why I love the coaching aspect, and I love producing. I love creating TV that grabs people, that reaches through the screen and grabs people. Because when I was 16, I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't really have any plan. I was just going to go to college and be a regular guy and be a regular worker, probably an exploited worker.
Now you are still an exploited worker.
In some ways, but I work for myself now. And so I'm able to agree upon whatever I agree upon. My wage includes all my expenses. I'm including all my things. And that way, those are write-offs to my own company. So I'm an employee of my own corporation. So therefore, I'm only exploiting myself. But I'm able to create something where I have a whole operation here. I have a wrestling school. I make wrestling gear, which is based by gear, I mean costumes. We make tights, kick pads, knee pads. I kind of have a whole operation in one.
Do you sew?
I sew a little bit, but my girlfriend is a master seamstress. She's excellent. She makes tango dresses and ballroom dance dresses. And then I converted her to making my costumes. And then when people saw my costumes, they said, oh, wow, I want gear like that. I want knee pads like yours. And then, so that's something that we do. Like during the shutdown, it's basically all we were doing was sewing. So that's a big,
Does she do headdresses? Does she do headdresses? Not for you. But if she's a costume person, I'm like obsessed with headdresses and making headdresses and all different really cool things.
Yeah, we've done some festival wear stuff, like mirrored hats with all sorts of things coming out. Yeah, I mean, that's, sitting around at night, just hanging out, doing kind of craft work.
You're getting your crafty on.
Yeah, and there's something really nice about sitting there and creating something. We have a culture where everybody's just consuming things and we're not creating things. And when you're creating things, there's something special, even if you're not creating it for yourself. I mean, what's great is we create things for our friends and our family that people like. My brother wrestles too. So when we make his tights, when we see his gear at his show, we take so much pride in that. And just there really is something that's like it's not a passive thing. It's an active thing. You're creating your world by creating these things. And you're not just sitting there consuming ads and consuming the sport. Like, I love watching UFC and I love watching wrestling. So you'll catch me doing that. But then there's times where, we just turn off everything in the house and we're just crafting or we've got a 7-year-old here. And so we're doing our arts and crafts over consuming TV. So that's just, special thing that we do.
Yeah. I'm particularly crafty. So I will always pick up on that. Like if somebody has any sort of crafty element, I'm always going to be interested in that. I have a little Etsy store and I do all sorts of crafting things. And that's really what I want to be when I grow up as an artist. I always say I'm an artist wannabe. I'm a crafter, but I'm not really an artist. I wish I were an artist, but
that's how I look at wrestling. It's my art. It's a performing art. It's a physical art. Like there's all the great psychological pulls that pull you in, sex and violence and the threat of violence. It's all there, but it's all woven in this artistic picture of these storylines that are, since I've been wrestling for so long, my storylines go deep. They go 20 years back. I just participated in like the Ring of Honor Pure Wrestling tournament. And I competed against the guy who came up in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and we trained together at the same dingy training center in a nasty ring that probably never got clean. And here we are 20 years later, still wrestling. So we're able to weave these storylines in. And I'll tell you what, his costume's amazing. My costume was there. So there's so many elements that go into this pro wrestling performance. I hate when people kind of see it when they look at it only as real or fake. I want them to look at it as artwork that then you can dissect it. But once I make it, once I do my match, it's sort of something I give to the fans. It's theirs. If they want to say it was great, if they want to say it was bad, that's up to them to enjoy the work of art that I've completed. Otherwise, if I looked at it as kind of like a sport, I would always be mad at myself for that one slip or for that one other thing. And it's easy to be hard on yourself when you're a performer. Anytime I misspeak or I stumble in my speech, because in wrestling, you have to talk people into the arena for you to give that performance to wrestle, just like you're going to be talking people into the massive arenas when you're giving your campaign speeches to thousands of people soon enough, or everybody gathering together on Zoom or whatever it is. It's just, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform and to give, to really get your point across in a way where you can relate to people. And so, I mean, pro wrestling and politics are the exact same thing. And I'll tell you why, because the good guys and the bad guys are paid by the same people. The banks.
It's theater. It's
the good
theater.
guys and the bad guys are paid by the same people. And the real work's done behind closed doors by people who aren't the representatives, because all they have our reps do is get on the phone and try and raise funds. They're not really legislating. They're taking legislation written by corporations, copy, paste, send, vote on it, put it into place. And then anytime rules from, like, let's say we vote to make cannabis legal in our state, or we vote to let felons vote in our state, then it gets put into these little committees that are run by really discrete groups funded by wealthy people.
Do not represent the majority of people.
Absolutely. And then we end up in these situations. So I sort of think the deeper I got into pro wrestling, the deeper I understood politics. And I mean, I've been obsessed with politics from the time I was writing about the McCain-Feingold bill of campaign finance reform in 99 or whatever that was, 98, 2000, where I thought, oh, we'll fix this campaign. To me, it was unfathomable that we had these problems in our democracy and that they weren't going to be fixed right away. And yet it's only gotten worse with, the Citizens United, and the money corrupting our politics has only gotten worse. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's appropriate. It's the best way to do it. It just means it's been legislated that way. And I really feel like we would be doing our democracy justice by changing a lot of these laws. And I really feel like a people's party, not a party of politicians funded only by, oh boy, I hope my battery's not.
Something happened. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. He might be having a battery problem. I am not sure. So I am going to just sort of fill up some time and see what happens if he comes back on. But this is so much fun talking to people that I would never normally meet or talk to. And I think it is really important to build these coalitions and these bridges with people because, somebody like Matt has an audience of people that would probably not otherwise be engaged politically. Maybe would pay attention, maybe wouldn't. Yeah, we lost him. That's okay. If he comes back, I'll let him back in. But the truth is that we were going to have to wrap up soon anyway. But I think, yeah, his battery died and he kind of got lost, but we were wrapping up anyway. So I'm just going to wrap up and say that was really cool to talk to him. And I'm very proud of myself for being able to share screen and show that insane airborne move, which I don't know that I think that should be a legal wrestling move. I think it looks pretty horrifying. If I was his...
Who ultimately owns the copyrights to the clip, because as your podcast gets bigger,
oh, here he is.
There's like certain
I know, but
laws.
Now you're under Aliska. Is that your girlfriend? Is Aliska the girlfriend?
Yes, that's her.
That's okay. I filled the space. Oh, now you're inside. You're probably
Yeah,
plugged in. Oh my God,
now.
whole change of scenery. And I was just saying, I mean, we're going to wrap up soon anyway, but I love being able to talk to people that I would otherwise never talk to. And I almost feel like through you, I can reach an entire audience of people that I would never, ever reach. And I think that that's so important. And I so appreciate that this is something that you're doing. I mean, obviously it comes pretty naturally to you. You've been interested in politics for a long time, but it's definitely something where we need to get more and more people involved that would otherwise not be involved.
Yeah. And I think just recently, Andrew Yang, who I know you're, privy to and a supporter of, I think, of a lot of his concepts. He just had another wrestler on named Dolph Ziggler, who's still in the WWE, Nick Nemeth, who I was a coworker of mine for years. And we've been friends for, 15 years now. We came up together through the WWE system, and we wrestle on TV in front of 1 million people every week. And yet we kind of are handcuffed to tell them what we really believe, because we're just doing it as a TV show. So we're just playing a character.
Yeah.
But the fans really, they're not just satisfied meeting the character. They want to really get to know us. They want to get deeper. And I feel like that's our chance to reach out to them and to connect on a more real level and inspire them to go out, to vote, to voice what they believe in, and to also just listen to other people's ideas and opinions and let that become a part of your thing. Because for me, I didn't come up with universal basic income. I didn't even know about, I didn't think Medicare for all was even the best concept till I was open to it. And then I did my research and I thought about it and I thought what I would want and what would make a best society. And we just, all my ideas, I'm not set in any of them. I'm always rethinking, refining. One of the things I teach my students is unlearn something every day. So whatever things you hold to be absolute truths or whatever you're holding on to, I always say those are the things that you should be questioning. You should be rethinking those. You should be rethinking why you're set in whatever way you are. And that'll help open you up to what is really best for you, because sometimes we just are saying what we've been told and not saying what comes from the heart and what comes from yourself. So I think giving people the chance to stop, think for themselves, peel off all those advertisements, peel off all that stuff, and really have a conversation where they can think about it, and no one's going to judge you if you are thinking slightly differently, and we can come to a consensus together and find things, common ground that we can agree on instead of only focusing on the differences. People say, oh, what's it like wrestling in Tokyo compared to Mexico, or I've wrestled all over. So what are the fans here like and the fans there like? And I'll say, I don't notice the differences. I notice the similarities, and it doesn't matter where I go. People are the same, and we really hold so many things to be similar. If we only focus on the differences, that's all we'll see. But if we focus on the similarities, we can really build that consensus.
So I have to go back to what you just said, because I loved what you just said before about unlearn something every day. And I think that is extremely brilliant. Actually, I think that is a very, very profound thing to say. And now I'm going to have to incorporate that into my life, because I think that is really true. I always think I learn things every day. I learn things almost by the minute. There is no shortage of that, but it never occurred to me to unravel. And I do see it as an onion. Like, we're born like onions, and you got to keep peeling back layers until you figure out what's really in there. And I think that that's a really good way of looking at it. I really appreciate that. It's very Zen.
It is a Zen phrase. It's an Alan Watts quote, who's a Zen leader. But that's having sort of a philosophy that you can incorporate into your life has really helped me. But it's like, not everybody has time to sit around and listen to Alan Watts talks all day. So I try and bring what I distill from that and try and throw it on everybody, because I'm not telling you to think this way or that way. I'm just asking people to rethink things or to go back and question. I had so many locked in beliefs in how to wrestle, or this is the right way, that's the wrong way. And I didn't really think of who actually told me that, who gave me that advice, and why did they give me that advice? Because sometimes you get what sounds like good advice or advice from a superior, and really it's terrible advice, even though you've integrated and been incorporating it in your life for years. It's just, there's never a better time than now to kind of rethink things. And I mean, even for me, I've had to rethink what I believe in. Should we be closing the economy? Should we be opening it? There's so many different things. My first gut instinct was shut it all down. And, I've come to accept sort of the reopening, because since people aren't getting any help, we're not getting anything,
Yeah.
we can't stay closed, because everybody will go bankrupt, and the only people that'll be winning are landlords. And I don't want that to happen.
Right. No, I mean, and I think that that's a good point. I always say this, people will ask me when I would do interviews, this policy, that policy, what's your thought on this thing, that thing? And they're always hypotheticals. They're not, every once in a while, someone will present you with a legitimate bill that's sitting there. What do you think about this bill? But for the most part, it's speculative policy. And I am very fluid on a lot of that stuff. This is why I got along so well with Andrew Yang. This is why, because to me, I have this concept that if you're reasonable and you have a basic premise of that minimum standard of living to which people are entitled, then the ways in which we can come about that can be varied. There's many different types of things that can work either together or separately. And so I am always open as far as policies go. And that is where people, I think, especially unfortunately liberals, get very fixated and stuck in one particular method, one particular policy. And I think that that is extremely short-sighted. I think we need to have a vision as to what we want to achieve. But as far as getting there, I think that there's so many different things. And that's how I view UBI. I don't think it should be in and of itself. I think it's a tool. I don't support UBI in lieu of Medicare for all or in lieu of a minimum wage, that's a living wage. But could that be an added component that could help? Yes, of course it could. So, I think that this is very important for people to understand that there's no shortage of good ideas. There's always good ideas. And I've had people say, well, what would you do? What policy would you create? And I'm like, do you know there's over 800 pieces of bills that are actually sitting in Congress that just don't get moved forward because not enough people have signed on to them? Don't you think in there's probably some good ideas? I mean, I'm sure there's some really crappy ideas, but there's got to be some good ideas. So why wouldn't we start with the good ideas that we already have and see what we can do that would help us get to where we want to go? I mean, that's just always been, I'm very pragmatic that way. And so, no, I'm not sold on any one thing. It doesn't have to be Medicare for all. We could call it whatever you want to. I just think healthcare is a human right and everybody's entitled to it. Now, you can call it what you want. You could, there's different systems. The French system is different from the Canadian system. Like, I'm not sold on any one thing. But to say that there should be a profit motive is unacceptable. So that's the one element that has to be removed. But how to do that? I'm pretty flexible, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great because then we're not losing things along the way. It's the vision that you have as a politician. That's to me what really sold me on following you on Twitter and interacting with you, because it's the end goal that we're trying to get to. And if we have, like I was saying, if we have leaders with the right vision, the people will help push things in the right direction. And one leader can't decide. Like we live in a culture where it seems like people think one leader or one person can really make the difference, when the truth is it's really the people together make the difference. And a leader gives us our worldview. A leader gives us a vision. And right now we have a leader whose vision of the world is a terrible, crummy place where everybody's out to screw you over. Yeah. And we end up with a world very similar. If we have leaders that believe that we can all get together and make sure that nobody goes bankrupt from getting cancer. How many GoFundMes I've had to do for my friends in wrestling business. Somebody blows out their knee, GoFundMe. Somebody blows out their shoulder, GoFundMe.
That's the number one. Actually, GoFundMe is, I think at one point it was like the number one health insurance plan of our country.
Oh my God, that just hurts. It just hurts me in so many ways. And I've been overpaying. Like I've been getting gouged by my health insurance company over and over. I mean, it's been the hardest bill for me to pay. I mean, like I said, I was struggling. So actually, because of losing income from this, I was able to qualify for a Florida Blue plan that dropped my rates from basically $400 a month to $150 a month. And I got dental and I got vision. I haven't had dental or vision insurance since my entire life.
How crazy is that we don't consider vision and dental part of health? Like first of all, we know for a fact that teeth are very important to health and that what happens in our mouth really does affect our bodies. Like this is not rocket science. And the fact that that's separate is so strange to me. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No mental health coverage either. I mean, what happens in your mind controls everything from what you see out in front of you to what happens on the inside. Your brain is everything. And if we're not working on, helping it and just bringing it to a conscious thought of what's going on inside my own head, then we're really just running on autopilot. We're just running on programming instead of really digging into the programming and seeing what works for us. I just think there's so many people that could be helped if we had medical care that really cared for people. And the people in the healthcare field, they want to help people. Our nurses and doctors work themselves to the bone. And yet the pharmaceutical company is the one that ends up with $80 billion in profit. It's just, it's gross amounts.
That's who should be incarcerated. And that brings it full circle to the beginning when we were talking about it, because I do believe that drug usage is a health issue, not a criminal issue. I've never found it to be a criminal issue. I personally don't think that drug usage should be illegal. I mean, obviously you can't have people, selling and prescribing and all of that stuff, but on a personal level, that's a health issue, not a criminal issue. But our drug executives, those are criminals. Those are criminals. Those are people that knew from the beginning that this is what would happen. And they did it anyway, because it was, and all the while fighting all legalization of cannabis laws.
Right. And my policy is that of harm reduction, which means if people are going to, it's the same way with sex ed. You can't tell kids in high school to not have sex. You could just give them the information and educate them and then help them if they have issues related to it. Same thing with drug use. You can't stop people from using the drugs because they're everywhere because of these pharmaceutical companies. But we can do the things to reduce the harm. And the pharmaceutical companies are doing things that increase the harm by overprescribing, overcreating. I mean, they're not looking out for people's best interest. They're obligated by the charters of their corporations to only go after that bottom line, which means turning every person in the United States into a customer, into a consumer of their product. And I mean, like, I just heard about a friend who had a car accident and, really bad. It's going to be, he's a fitness model and a wrestler. And after hearing about that, I just thought to myself, oh, he's going to become an opioid head because he's going to be in despair because he'll have lost his way of life, his living, his sense of self. And then he's going to be hurting. So he's going to be prescribed these pills, which he'll then lean on and then not be able to lean off of. I mean, you can't you can't introduce something to somebody that's going to, in the end, I mean, I've seen the path before.
Yeah.
We've all seen it with our friends, our family, people who aren't like drug users are bad people. No, they're just like you or I. The situation puts them in a place where they become a victim of the pharmaceutical industry and no one's standing up for them. No one's fighting for them. No one's trying to help them. They only get punished and chastised and pushed to the side. And, I mean, I love hearing that you want to stand up for them.
Oh, for sure. And actually now I feel like I need to be leading some sort of unionization of wrestlers. I feel like there needs to be some sort of mass universal wrestler organization because that's crazy. And you know what? I'm not surprised. I saw the movie, The Wrestler, and I know that that's a movie, but based on what you're telling me, it actually now seems pretty accurate in terms of like, you guys are like just fodder to be used and abused, basically.
Yeah, like in that movie, The Wrestler, my friend Nigel McGuinness was one of the extras in it. He's a guy who moved from England to Kentucky in like 98 to follow his dream as a wrestler. Well, he got used up and spit out and basically was working at a grocery store as a, cutting meat, just like the guy in The Wrestler was. Yeah. And then finally, he got a break. WWE hired him as an announcer. And then as soon as the pandemic hit, they furloughed him. There's and
you guys are treated very expendable.
But it's very replaceable. And if you stand up for yourself or ask for more money, you're easily pushed to the side. That's why I think the wrestlers could come together with, you're inspiring me right now to come up with an idea that's like, we should unionize ourselves first, starting nonprofits, a collective where everybody kicks in. And then that way we've got a fund where we can divvy out money to help people in a situation. That might be a good place to start with, to build a consensus, and then we would maybe be able to unionize from there.
I mean, because that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, and I think that a lot of industries use that independent contractor concept basically as the means to screw people. I mean, that's essentially what it is. And I think people need to be aware of that. And what you guys do is dangerous. Like you should be getting more insurance and better healthcare, and because of what you're doing to your bodies and how taxing that is. And so, that's a problem.
Yeah, I have a friend who became a wrestler after playing a few years in the NFL. He gets $15,000 a month retirement from that NFL, and he wasn't a big play, but he was active. He risked his body, his mind, his life for it, and because they're unionized, he's going to be supported for his whole life because of that run. Now, my run with WWE ends, and then that's it. There's no support. There's nothing. And when you're in WWE, it's a full life dedication. You don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't do anything that's not for the company. And then when they tell you your family, they tell you your family, and then the next week they fire you. I mean, that's what they do. And so you're left with nothing but your own two hands and your skills. And so even if you built a fan base, they essentially can take that away from you. I built a fan base for 8 years as Evan Bourne. And then, I have to go back to my old wrestling name, Matt Sydal, which I'm really happy to be back as myself. But at the same time, I there's a gap and people still find out, oh, you were Evan Bourne. I mean, it's surprising me, but I'm still trying to earn back my fans so that I can sell a t-shirt so that I can survive. I mean, I'm not, people think if somebody was on TV, they're wealthy and set for life. And it's just,
No.
It's absolutely not the case because we don't have a union, because we don't have a retirement plan.
So we need to be unionizing wrestlers. I think this is now this could possibly be like a new campaign thing for me. I mean, this is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, we can,
This is
I
a
don't
problem.
know. I wish I knew more about unions or something, but I do know that when some of my wrestler friends who live out in LA, they do a few jobs on Hollywood sets and then they get their SAG card and they finally get health insurance that they deserve. They get all these things that they would have loved to have had the whole time, the security that they wish they had when they were a wrestler. They don't get that till they're done wrestling and they're in SAG. So something like that would be really great.
Yeah, you need collective bargaining power, but
or joining any sporting, the MLB, the NFL, they all have collective bargaining. And I think maybe we could join with the UFC fighters who right now are fighting for that too, because I feel like UFC fighters have it worse than pro wrestlers. I mean, they're sacrificing everything and their pays are way lower. I mean, they're doing it more like an Olympic sport.
well,
Like
and they are
have-
really putting themselves out to be battered. I mean,
And they
like
can only
that,
work-
that's completely, that's a different animal to me.
and
Completely.
they can only work 4 times a year. And if they're only making 2,000 to show and 2,000 to win, that's $4,000 times 4. You're not even making any money. And UFC also took the ability to have sponsors from them, which is another thing. Like some companies will empower their wrestlers to have sponsorships, while WWE kind of does not want their guys to have these kind of sponsorship opportunities unless they're getting the cut, unless it's their deal.
So is this one of those things where all roads lead to Vince McMahon?
Well, I mean, he's the most powerful man in the industry and he's been in charge running things for a long time. Yeah.
My whole life. Like
Yeah.
I remember him as a kid. I remember him doing this. And this was back in the Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant days.
Mhm.
And-
The McMahons themselves spent over $50 million on Linda McMahon's Senate campaign. It was unsuccessful, but they spent $50 million on that. And I was, for us as wrestlers, we were just thinking, boy, that money could have been used to save so many wrestlers from problems. There's so much help we could have done with that money. But, they were trying to enter politics in order to create tax laws so that way they can remain billionaires and millionaires even longer. And it wasn't about helping other people. And I think that might be one of the reasons that they didn't win, because I sort of felt like it wasn't a community-based thing. It was like, hey, we've got the money to run for office, so let's do it so we can do policy to help ourselves. Because as a big business, that's sort of an impetus to like create government policy so that you profit more. And usually that's at the expense of employees.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of
Independent
campaigns,
contractors.
we see a lot of campaigns like that. Even sometimes campaigns that are supposedly grassroots campaigns. Essentially what it is somebody decides, I want this job, I'm going to run, and then I have to sell myself to everybody to vote for me. That's generally how it works, this sort of top-down approach, as opposed to somebody that's coming up through the people as a representative of the people who is sort of, just like the natural person to represent those people. Excuse me. So that to me is a very big difference than shoving some candidate down people's throats because that's who wants that job.
Yeah. And I mean, the people who want to be politicians are probably the people who shouldn't be. I mean, that's sort of I don't know. It's a common.
Well, it's
phrase.
not supposed to be a career. I mean, and that really is what
Right.
generational change is transforming politics into service. We ran our campaign as a service-based campaign pretty much from the beginning. As soon as we had people on board to be serving, we were out doing community service. And this was long before COVID shut us down. But, once you get elected to a position, that's still a community service position. I don't think, and I don't have a problem with people getting paid to do that. That's fine. If you're a good civil servant and you're serving your community, I don't have a problem with it being a paid position, but it is a public service position and it isn't supposed to be a career. So when I hear people say politician, to me, it's like, that shouldn't be a thing. That's not a thing. A politician should not be its own entity. It just, that's not a thing. You are whoever you are, and you're representing the people you're representing, but that's not who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, I mean, what's a politician? Somebody who just spends all day on the phone trying to raise funds. They're not actually representing people. They're just trying to raise funds so they can buy ads. So the media companies will put them on a debate stage and they can, I mean, it's a system that could really use some streamlining, and it could really use some good leadership. And that's really what we're missing from our politicians is they should be leaders of the community, that the community wants to represent them,
Exactly.
not the lesser of two evils. I mean, I could go on about ranked choice voting and all how a two-party
For sure.
system is a disservice to all of us because we just vote for the thing we don't want to have happen, or the things we're afraid of instead of what we actually would want to accomplish. It's baffling to me why we don't have more choices and more options, because
Well, they don't want us to. The duopoly is extremely, it's just two wings of the same corporate animal. So they don't want competition because right now they own the whole thing. So, and I would argue we don't even have two parties. I argue we have one corporate party, and just one side is a little nicer to the LGBTQ.
And just like in wrestling, they will fight in the afternoon on TV, and then in the evening they'll go have drinks together.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all on the same team, and it's frustrating for people who want change or who are fooled into believing that the system, that there's an us versus them, when really it's them as politicians sort of versus us as the collective rest of the United States of America.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but I just want to ask you, and we're sort of this is new, our podcast is new, so we're sort of trying some stuff out, but like, what does the idea of generational change, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think generational change is something that has been beaten out of our system, where when I was young, there was like this big environmental push, and all the things that I thought were going to change, cannabis laws, all these things I thought were going to change, the fact that we're in perpetual war, when I grew up believing that peace was possible and diplomacy was possible, there are things that they were just like ingrained into forgetting. We're taught and propagandized into no longer believing that change is possible. So generational change, I don't know if you're saying it with a J or a G.
Well, okay, the play on word is with the J because we do it because, marketing, and it's cute. But it is a concept to me that is very valid. And I do notice that there is a dichotomy between the generations, and a lot of the people that support me are younger. I have a lot of these kids that are volunteers that worked on my campaign, and they do see things differently.
For me, generational change would be, instead of taking advantage of our young people and drafting them into wars and forcing them to live in these kind of police state, it would be about planting the people in politics now, planting trees that they're not going to sit in the shade of, right? Creating a world that's better for not just the generation that's about to vote, but their kids, and extrapolating out and working for, thinking 30-year plans instead of 1 quarter. Oh, we need to have this between the second and the third quarter. We need to accomplish this. It would be, generational change would be making a 30-year plan and working towards that. Equality doesn't come easy, but all these things do come with a vision and working towards it. And I just feel like everybody's trying to get a short-term outcome. In 2008, Biden didn't support gay marriage, and now he does. Oh, wow, very progressive. To me, it's just that's deplorable. It's not enough. And he wasn't thinking, how can we help this next generation of people who are struggling with their sexual identity and all these things. He was just thinking, what'll get me a couple extra votes this upcoming quarter. And so that's the opposite of generational change. So generational change is kind of what we're doing here, communicating on new platforms, reaching out to young people, and then setting goals for the good of all mankind, like para el bien de todos, for everybody.
That's so profound. And it's such a good way. Thank you so much for coming on, and I have to say this, you're so cute. I'm sorry. I have to say that. I'm sure you probably hear that, but you are. And I actually prefer this look that you've got going on to the short hair, but I am more like, hippie prone, and you start talking all Zen, and, you have me at that. So I appreciate you coming on so much and what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing, when we're out of COVID, are you going to be out there doing stuff again?
Yeah. I mean, I'm wrestling in Jacksonville this weekend. or on Wednesday. But yeah, I'm going to be moving and shaking with my mask on. I don't plan on taking it off for a couple years. We live it like, I won't keep you too much longer. First of all, thank you for all the sweet things you said. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, you're making me think about what I can do for my community of wrestlers and people there. And yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I was getting at there at the end, but
it's all good. So if people want to check out what you're doing and what you're up to, where can they go? Where can they check out your work?
Oh yeah. So, that like, I love performing at live wrestling events, but I'm on Instagram, Matt Sydal, MATTSYDAL. And I'm on, Twitter a lot. I love interacting with people. But
yeah, people check out Matt. And you know what? When we put this out, I'm going to make sure to put your information will be on the screen. I have young people that know how to do these things that are not me. And so everyone will be able to find you and follow you. And I'm so glad I got to meet you. That's just really cool.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm glad we got to interact like this. I mean, I really appreciate the forum and what you're doing. And so, if, anything I can do in the future to help out and kind of be of service, count me in.
No, don't you worry. Every person that I meet that has a big following that is in some sort of sports field, I keep a mental note. So when I need an autograph something for some charity thing, I know all the people I can go to. Don't you worry. I'll find you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.
Bye.
So that was really fun. And I am proud of myself for being able to do a share screen and show that move because it's just crazy. And he does it all the time. I don't know how he doesn't puncture his lungs, breaking ribs doing that. I really don't. Anyway, so that was Matt. And that was really fun. And we are going to sign off right now. And so peace out all.